The story takes place after the Silent Rapture, an inexplicable catastrophe that erased much of the known universe, leaving humanity struggling to survive. Amid the crisis, a moon draws the attention of the survivors because it hides a gigantic ocean of blood. After the introduction, we meet Simon, a convict sent alone on a dangerous exploration mission aboard the AT-5 submarine. During the descent, Central Command warns him about electrical failures capable of causing fires. Surprised, he states that no one had mentioned that before. At that moment, we realize that Simon was not informed about all the risks of the mission. During the descent, Simon discovers that he is exploring a completely unknown region. Shortly afterward, he sees blood dripping inside the cabin. The tension increases when the submarine approaches its maximum depth. Next, Simon receives the mission to follow the coordinates and record everything he finds. Shortly afterward, contact with the team is interrupted. Alone, he begins exploring the region using a special camera capable of recording images from outside the submarine. During the mapping, Simon finds a gigantic skeleton hidden in the depths, something that does not appear in any of the mission records. Unable to ask for help, he tries to leave the area. At that moment, the vessel locks up and begins to be violently shaken. Thrown from side to side, he has no idea what is happening. After the tremors, the team makes contact to check the submarine's condition. Irritated, Simon complains about not having been warned about the mission's dangers. He refuses to continue when he discovers they intend to send him even deeper. Simon goes so far as to say that he would rather rot in prison than face that. However, the team explains that possible hull damage would kill him before he could even return. Calmer, Simon confirms that the vessel is intact and shows one of the images captured during the exploration. The photo appears to reveal a huge skeleton. While part of the team believes it is a rock, others point out that the supposed formation has teeth. Shortly afterward, Simon is brought back to the surface. It is at this moment that we meet Captain Ava. Simon again warns about the strange liquid that continues appearing inside the cabin. Ava downplays the situation and remains focused on the expedition. Believing he has done his part, he suggests being replaced. Before that, he asks that his discoveries be passed on to the next explorer and insists that there is something living in the depths. While the images are analyzed, we discover that his oxygen may not last until the end of the journey. Even aware of the risk, Eva decides to continue the exploration. Upon analyzing the images, Eva admits that Simon may have found a real skeleton. Excited, he believes he will finally be removed from the mission. However, Ava makes it clear that this is not going to happen. She reveals that it took them a long time to find someone willing to take that risk, and they do not intend to waste the opportunity. Desperate, Simon demands to be rescued and warns that there is something alive in the depths. Ava shows no concern. Even in the face of the warning, she decides to continue the exploration and leaves Simon talking to himself. Consumed by anger, Simon begins tampering with the submarine's controls and ends up activating the vessel's imaging system. The action exposes the team to radiation and causes chaos on the surface. When Ava confronts him, Simon insists that he did not know about the danger and again begs to be removed from the mission. No one listens to him. Shortly afterward, Ava is taken for medical treatment and another man named Jack assumes command of the operation. Despite the incident, he keeps the mission active and gives Simon a deadline to collect the sample before being rescued. At that moment, Jack reveals that he consulted Simon's history. He then mentions the disaster that led him to prison and says he does not believe all the blame was his. Even so, he says he admires the fact that Simon took responsibility and surrendered. While Jack continues insisting on the importance of the discovery, Simon notices something strange and cuts the communication. Next, he finds an old computer and manages to make it work. The recording reveals a disturbing truth: that mission was never meant to bring anyone back. According to the message, whoever enters that submarine is being sent to die. Shortly afterward, Simon comes across an image of himself. Unlike the man in the recording, he refuses to accept his fate and decides to fight to survive. Continuing the exploration, Simon tries to find the enormous skeleton he had photographed. However, upon returning to the location, he discovers that the skeleton has disappeared without a trace. Confused, Simon reports what happened, but Ava believes the tremors may have altered his position. Even bothered by the conditions inside the submarine, he is pressured to continue the mission and collect the sample. During the conversation, Simon mentions the explorers he believes were abandoned before him. Ava denies the accusation and insists that he is the first to be sent into the ocean. Simon is convinced that the mission is merely a disguised death sentence. He states that continuing to search for the skeleton will not help anyone. For the first time, Ava sets aside the official speech and admits that she also dislikes the situation. Even so, she insists that humanity does not have enough resources or people to waste opportunities. The discussion soon turns into a debate about the future of the species. While Ava believes there is still hope, Simon argues that everything is already over and that people simply refuse to accept it. The conversation ends when she reminds him of the disaster that led him to prison. A new oxygen alert catches Simon's attention. Upon checking his surroundings, he comes across the enormous skeleton once again. This time, however, the structure's position seems different. Convinced that it moved, Simon tries to warn the woman, but she attributes everything to the unstable environment of the ocean. Even suspicious, he is pressured to continue the mission and collect the sample. When he questions what will happen afterward, Simon discovers that his work will still be far from over. The answer only reinforces the feeling that he remains trapped in that operation. Following Ava's instructions, Simon launches the submarine against the enormous skeleton. After the impact, he believes he has successfully collected the sample and is relieved to discover that the vessel withstood it. However, while analyzing the images, Simon notices something strange and tries to warn Ava that there is something alive watching the submarine. Before he can explain further, the vessel begins to be violently shaken. Desperate, he states that something grabbed the submarine and even suggests abandoning the sample. Even so, Ava insists that he continue. Thrown against the cabin, Simon ends up losing consciousness. At that moment, he has a childhood flashback, remembering other children watching the last star still visible in the sky while discussing whether it had already died or not. Simon awakens after the attack and discovers that the submarine has lost power. Using the few resources available, he tries to find a way to restore the vessel's systems. While searching for a solution, strange sounds echo from outside, increasing his tension even more. After searching the internal compartments and manipulating the controls, Simon finally manages to reactivate the power. A new problem arises when the submarine's hull is damaged. Amid the chaos, Simon must deal with a fire and control his own injuries. Determined to survive, he resumes the exploration. During the mapping, Simon finally records the image of the creature he believes is pursuing him. However, when he tries to confirm the discovery, it has already disappeared. The hours pass, and the isolation, exhaustion, and pressure begin affecting his mind. Between visions and confused memories of the past, Simon continues advancing through the cave until he ends up finding something unexpected, an old submarine abandoned in the depths. This reinforces his suspicion that he is not the first to be sent to that place. After finding the SM-8, Simon discovers that the submarine has been abandoned for a long time and is no longer capable of functioning. Trying to access its records, he ends up finding strange photographs, but he decides to ignore them and continue searching for a way out. While exploring the region, an unexpected signal appears on the radio. On the other side, a woman believes that rescue has finally arrived and mentions Ava by name. It is at that moment that Simon understands the truth. He really is not the first to be abandoned in that ocean. As the conversation progresses, the two realize that they are trapped in the depths, and they realize that they have been abandoned to their fate. Even trying to maintain hope, Simon finds someone who seems to have given up a long time ago. Completely shaken, Simon asks the woman to keep talking to him. Without much hope, she reveals that other explorers went through the same situation and issues a warning about what exists in the depths. According to her, something found in that ocean may be connected to the silent rapture, the mysterious event that led humanity to collapse. While trying to explain her discovery, the woman describes a strange light that seemed to defy all logic. The revelation leaves Simon intrigued. However, as the conversation continues, the woman's voice begins to sound increasingly strange, making him question what really happened to her. The woman refuses to explain what she truly found in the depths. With her voice becoming increasingly strange, she merely warns Simon to forget that light. She states that some things are too dangerous to be known. Not understanding what is happening, Simon begins to believe that everything may be the result of isolation or lack of oxygen. Just when he is convinced that he had been talking to himself, the woman responds again. She then offers him a possible way out and provides new coordinates. Desperate to survive, Simon agrees to follow her instructions. During the conversation, he also reveals that he continues carrying the burden of the filament station tragedy, the disaster for which many still blame him. Upon hearing the mention of filament station, the woman completely changes her attitude and becomes interested in Simon's past. Reluctantly, he ends up opening up about the tragedy that led him to prison. Simon insists that he was not truly responsible for the disaster and states that those who really caused everything abandoned him to bear the consequences alone. Increasingly shaken, he begins to lose hope of escaping that ocean. Amid the despair, Simon admits that he only wants to go home. It is then that an intense light appears in the depths. Fascinated, the woman begins describing it as something impossible to ignore, making Simon even more uneasy. The woman continues describing it as an answer to mysteries greater than humanity itself can understand. Increasingly frightened, Simon tries to move away. Not understanding what is happening, he tries to discover where the woman is. However, her answers become increasingly disturbing. She states that there is no longer any reason to be afraid and insists that something is calling to them. The situation becomes even stranger when Simon realizes that the speaker cable had been severed. This means that voice should not have been reaching him. Shortly afterward, the entity mentions his name, even though it had never received that information. Frightened, Simon tries to flee while the submarine is violently shaken. Then a colossal light invades the environment and paralyzes everything around him. Trapped in a trance-like state, Simon begins hearing the creature's voice directly inside his mind. When he regains consciousness, he finds himself surrounded by blood from the ocean. The entity states that they are part of the same thing and that they are connected to that ocean. Unable to react, Simon feels his body and mind being consumed by a strange connection with the blood around him. The creature continues invading Simon's mind and begins calling him Butcher. Before he can understand the meaning of that, Simon returns to reality, vomiting blood. Upon regaining his senses, he notices a grotesque presence inside the vessel. Overcome with panic, he tries to defend himself, but the creature disappears as suddenly as it appeared. Shortly afterward, a voice speaks to him again. Convinced that everything is just another manipulation, Simon begs to be left alone and states that he no longer knows whether he is alive or dead. However, the conversation takes an unexpected turn when he realizes that the communication system is actually functioning. On the other side is Ava, who seems just as confused as he is. During the conversation, Simon discovers something disturbing. Entire days have passed since the last contact, much more time than he should have been able to survive with the available oxygen. Not understanding how he is still alive, he begins questioning everything that happened since his encounter with the entity. Shaken by everything that happened, Simon begs to be removed from the depths. He insists that he had no involvement in the filament station disaster and states that he was abandoned by everyone. Ava laments his situation, but admits that the mission is too important to be interrupted. According to her, the risks of new dives are too high. Unconvinced, Simon questions why he was sent there and recalls everything he faced during the exploration. Ava responds that the collected sample was not enough to reveal answers and orders him to remain there observing. Already lacking the strength to argue, Simon remembers when Ava claimed that he was the first to reach that ocean. However, the discovery of the SM-8 made him realize that story was not true. Upon hearing the name of the other submarine, the team becomes alert and asks how he knows about it. He states that he found its remains and the name was written on the side. At that moment, he remembers the images from the other submarine and tries to access them, but access is denied. He says that if they want that information, they will have to come get it, because he went through hell and he thinks that is fair. Ava states that there is no possibility that his computer accessed another one because it does not possess the necessary credentials, and the SM-8's computer should not even be functioning. Even so, Simon insists that he is telling the truth and explains how he managed to find it. Ava asks how far away he is, and Simon states that not very far. She asks if, with the correct credentials, he could access the SM-8's data. Seeing an opportunity, Simon asks whether he will be removed from there if he succeeds. Ava promises that if he recovers the records, she herself will come get him. The declaration creates disagreement among the other team members, but Ava insists that the decision is hers. According to her, the lost submarine contains technologies that can no longer be reproduced. Faced with the offer, Simon accepts the mission and receives the necessary instructions to access the vessel's records. While trying to locate the cave entrance again, he continues hearing accusations about his past. After a long search, Simon finally finds the place and reestablishes the connection with the SM-8. As soon as he completes the data transfer, he begins listening to the final recordings of the missing crew. The records reveal that the explorers discovered something terrible in that ocean and went so far as to resort to cannibalism to survive. As the message progresses, the accounts become increasingly disturbing. To Simon's horror, the crew members repeat the same words he heard from the entity. The recording ends in despair, while they insist that the answer to everything is hidden in the depths. At the same time, the situation inside the submarine rapidly worsens. Blood begins flooding the cabin, and Simon realizes that something is wrong with his own body. Small wounds transform into grotesque marks, as if he were being affected by the same force that consumed the previous explorers. Before he can understand what is happening, Ava contacts him again. She states that she has come to rescue him and orders him to listen carefully to her instructions. Ava reveals that there is still something important inside the SM-8 and orders Simon to retrieve it. Exhausted and on the verge of collapse, he cannot believe that he will have to risk himself once again. At that moment, the entity speaks to him again. It states that Ava never intended to save him, and that the data will be recovered while he is left to die. Shortly afterward, Ava herself admits that she will not be able to keep her rescue promise. According to her, the recovered information is too important to be lost. Convinced that he has been deceived once again, Simon descends into the indicated compartment and finds the place flooded with blood. After recovering the object the team had been searching for, he tries to return and send the data to the surface. However, the entity intervenes. Trapped against the vessel's structure, Simon fights desperately to escape and manages to free himself, but loses one of his arms in the process. Even gravely wounded and knowing that he will not survive, Simon refuses to give up. Holding the recovered device, he activates the system one final time and tries to ensure that the information reaches its destination. Furious, the entity tries to stop him and attacks him violently. Even so, Simon continues resisting with his last strength. Despite fighting until the very last moment, Simon ends up being brutally killed by the creature. The final scene shows only the device floating in the ocean of blood, leaving uncertain whether his sacrifice was enough to change anything.